All right, we are happy to welcome back, as always, Super Bill Bradley. Bill, welcome back. Hopefully life is good in Texas.
Thank you very much. I'm sitting down at a buddy of mine's house, David Sisler, and we're having a couple of toddies to get our mind right.
Nice. Well, hey, Bill, we got lots to talk about, so let's get to it. Nice to see your smiling face. We didn't do that in your past visits. And you are the greatest Eagle to wear number 28. I don't know if you know that, but you are officially the greatest Eagle to wear number 28.
Well, thank you. That's nice to hear because everybody else has forgotten about it.
Oh, no, we didn't forget.
No.
Well, Bill, the Eagles have just opened training camp. You had 4 head coaches during your 8 years with the Eagles. Was Dick Vermeil's in 1976 the toughest?
Oh yeah, he was a grinder, but a wonderful man. And I played for him for a year, and then he traded me to the Vikings.
Mm-hmm.
And Bud Grant was the head coach there, and I went there at 32, going on 33 years old, and I was almost a rookie. Everybody there, from Purple People Leaders to Fran Tarkington, were up in their mid 30s to 40s, early 40s. So I went there and I went through training camp, and I had a really good training camp. And then Bud was not going to get rid of the safety that was there. And so they let me go at the very end of training camp. And then I sat at home with a contract that I was still getting paid for. And so then at the very 4 games left in the season, I was sitting around my 86-acre hay farm, and Jerry Wilson called me. And he's the old safety for the St. Louis Cardinals, and was my idol growing up because I saw him make interceptions with 2 broken hands on national TV one time. And so he called me as the GM and said, Bill, Mike Sensabaugh has gotten hurt, and our punter's hurt, and I want you to come to the Cardinals now, and you'll be starting next weekend. And I'd gone through about 4 teams by then, and I was still getting paid. So I said, I'm not going to do it. You don't know what I've been through for the last 4 or 5 weeks. And then he said, Bill, I need you here. I said, do you promise on a stack of Bibles that if I come there, I'll be starting as a punter and as a safety? And Jerry said, I promise. And he held to his promise. I went there and started the last 4 games for him and punted and played safety. And so I lettered with the Cardinals for my last year.
There you go. Hey, well, how about especially more as a veteran, how's it like training for training camp? Is it the grind that we think it is? I mean,
yeah, I still get a little sickness every time that it's about time to start training camp, from junior high, camp, junior high school, college, and then the pros. And every time I get around cut grass, because they didn't have a whole lot of, AstroTurf and stuff like that then. So every time I get around grass this time of the year, I almost start throwing up. But because the heat's on and you're fixing to grind it out with 2-a-days. But I love it. So, it's just in my later days, I almost throw up every summer about this time thinking about going to 2-a-days. And well, Dick, like you said earlier, Dick was he was changing as they say now, the culture at Philadelphia. And he did. And then naturally, I left there and then went to the Cardinals. And a year later, they all went to the Super Bowl. And I got to miss that, unfortunately. But that's just the way the climate is. And because I've been coaching now for almost 32 years, so I understand the decisions you got to make. Back then, I didn't understand it as a young man and was a little ticked off about it. But after having coached now for a number of years, I can see the decisions that had to be made, and Dick changed the culture around there. So, and it did well because he took the 1980 team to the Super Bowl.
Sure
but
did.
They were still going 2-a-days and stuff in New Orleans when they were playing the Super Bowl, and they were just worn out and they lost that game.
Well, hey, Bill, I know one of the guys on that team is an old friend of yours, and I know where you're going to be this weekend, a certain city in Northeast Ohio. And a certain tall, legendary wide receiver is going to be there getting inducted into the Pro Football Hall of Fame. Tell me about the awesome Harold Carmichael.
Oh, gosh, he was he played college ball as a basketball player and athlete. Best athlete I'd ever been around at 6'7". He could still run a sub 4.8 40. at 6'7", and this guy could catch balls with one hand, almost with his ears. He was such a good catcher, and gosh, he was just. And we got to know each other really well. And all those guys, Harold Jackson, me, John Bunning, Bill Berge, and all those guys, we still get together. As a matter of fact, we're going to get together at Canton and stay at a hotel, about 13 of us, from Keith Krefley to all those guys I just mentioned. And I think Dick's going to have a hospitality suite.
Nice.
And man, nobody's off limits there to get jabbed at. And that's what we love about it.
It doesn't sound like you're going to have any fun with all those
No,
guys.
we're going to be we're going to be boring.
Yeah.
Oh, it's so much fun. I can't wait. And I just went to my high school reunion we had this past weekend in Palestine, Texas, and we had about 15 to 20 of us, the ones that didn't get shot at and killed in Vietnam or had a heart attack later on. We get together every year, and it's just a blast because we had won the only state high school championship that our high school, the Palestine Fighting Wildcats, won. And so we get together, it's like we never have been apart. And it's just all that group from high school to UT to the Eagles. I have some of the best friends in my life that I played ball with. And we went through a lot of training and a lot of bumps and bruises and wins and losses. And it's just wonderful.
You have had a great run, I guess, of coaches, and you said you've been coaching yourself. But in reading the book that I just finished up, The Boys Got It Right, which you are basically the star of the book, with a lot of Pennsylvania ties to that with the big 33 game and all that. But I found it interesting as a high school player on that team, you were being coached by Bobby Lane and Doak Walker, two football legends. Of course, then you went on to Darrell Royal, and then you go to the NFL, and you bounce around with those guys. You end up with Bud Grant, another Hall of Famer. Your life has been surrounded by football legends.
Oh, gosh. And even my dad back at home, he played double-A ball and baseball, and he was a baseball coach for almost 30 years, and he won a championship 27 out of the 30. Wow. From Pee Wee League to Little League to Pony League to semi-pro league. When I was 15 years old in Palestine, I was playing semi-pro baseball with the Palestine Pals. Now listen to this list. Boo Quarles played with the St. Louis Cardinals. They made a movie about Wayne Durham. I got to groom my life around baseball. So I got drafted out of high school in the 7th round by the Detroit Tigers to play double-A ball in Montgomery, Alabama. And I went down there and got homesick for my girlfriend, had to get $25,000 back in 1965. That was a lot of money. But I did get a scholarship to Texas. I took a scholarship at Texas then, and then started going the football route and got drafted by the Eagles in 69 in the 3rd round as a punter/player. And by the way, that book is correct. It was the first time that our segregated all-star game allowed African-American guys to play in it. And that's how Jerry and I really became the greatest friends. And that's how that book got written. I understand that it may be a movie with the climate that the U.S. is going through right now, some for the lives that matter. They say it's going to be a movie in and around sometime 22 maybe. Very Jim Dent is a great writer. He wrote The Junction Boys, The 12 Mighty Orphans. He wrote a book about Jerry Jones. He's written some really good books. And but in reality, during that time, I penned it. I basically wrote it on my front porch for a couple of years because Jim Dent would meet with me all the time. We'd sit on the front porch, and he penned it with his own idea, and it became a bestseller in a lot of markets.
Well, I saw a piece about you several years ago, and it said a quote from you: "I have had recess every day of my adult life. It's been like an unbelievable movie." So I got to ask, are you still having fun?
Oh yeah, still having fun. I just got through coaching with June Jones and some of those names in football and then I just got through coaching this past year with the Houston Blues. We had the TSL, the spring football. I've coached in every FL, literally every FL known to man, from the CFL to the USFL is when I started. And then I went through a bunch of FLs. Then I went to the CFL for about almost 8 years. And I went to the NFL for about 8 years. And now I'm just coaching leagues to try to get guys back to the NFL. The TSL was spring league. And so we had the Southern Division in Houston, which had 4 teams, and the Northern Division in Indianapolis, which had 4 teams. And we had Fox Sports, so that was a pretty good deal. And they just played the Mega Bowl not too long ago. And so I've been in every FL known to man, and it has been a great education. And I have a wonderful wife, because basically she's a football widow, as we say. And she's just a wonderful lady. And she, as a matter of fact, if I don't get a job, sometimes after a while, she'll come in and say, Bill, don't you have a camp or a coaching gig you can go do? She wants me to hit the road, sometime to get away.
Well, Bill, speaking of your time in Philly, I just finished reading another book, which you also got another part of a chapter in too, called The Secret Apartment.
Oh, yeah. Isn't that great? Tom Lard Garvey. I nicknamed him Lard Garvey. Would you like for me to talk about that?
Yeah, go ahead. Because
when Tom came back from Vietnam, his uncles were the Nylon brothers, and the Nylon brothers had all the concession along the East Coast pro facilities from down to Baltimore all the way up to New York with the Jets, the Eagles, the Colts, and all that kind of stuff. So his uncle had all the concessions and parking. So Tom came back from Vietnam, and he was kind of not a lost soul, but he was looking for things to do. So his uncle, Jim Nylon, he hired him to handle all the parking at the Spectrum for basketball, at the Vet for football, because he could trust him. And Tom always had a lot, because parking was cash money. And Tom was one of the most honest people, and his uncle hired him to just run the parking and that sort of stuff at all the events, from the Spectrum to Franklin, not Franklin Field, but the Vet, and then on down the line. And he did those jobs in Philly. And he at parking, when they have a 70,000 people coming to a stadium in a lot of cars, he's handling a lot of cash.
Mm-hmm.
And so his uncle could trust him because he was such an honest man. Well, then Tom roller skated all over the Vet. He went all up and through there when nothing was happening there. And so that's where we started hanging out, that South Philly and Center City. And I got to meet Tom. He found a place right up in there where they stored some, hamburger buns, hot dog buns and stuff. And the door actually looked like you could open the door, and he always kept it crowded in there with boxes of different things for the food and beverage. But then once you cleared it, you had a secret passageway to his apartment. And we had that thing decked out with antique furniture and all that, but everybody thought it was just a storeroom. So it became Tom Garvey's secret apartment at the Vet, and a lot of fun went down in there.
Yeah. Well, I got thinking, connecting the dots from one of the last times we had you on. You were talking about the night that the Flyers won the Stanley Cup. You and Dempsey were at the Vet with this statue deal, and I thought they were probably in the secret apartment that night. They snuck out when they got out. They started.
Oh yeah, when we knew, we left early because I had parked my car at the Eagles entrance, and they needed the Flyers, the Broad Street Bullies won, and I knew that was going to be some kind of celebration, man, because they were starving for a championship. So Tom came up, and he was going to park right underneath there where we park usually when we'd go work out at the Vet. I leaned over the second level railing, and I said, Demp, do not park your car there. Go way around back over there by this street and the cyclone fence over by the interstate there, or the highway. And I said, park that big old Sabre Buick of yours over there, because when they come out of here, it's going to be mayhem, and they're going to march all the way up to Ben Franklin statue on the city building. And sure enough, we did it, and we were sitting up there having some beer, and they had just imported some statues that some guy had done in Europe, and they beautiful statues. They're still around the field there. And since the vet's gone, they put them in different spots around the field. And so we were sitting up underneath that one. And Dempsey and I went up there to sit. And all of a sudden that game was over. We went right over there and watched. They came over because we were so bad with the Eagles, they came over. And Leonard Tost had parked his limousine under there by the Philadelphia entrance, the Eagle entrance to the vet. And so all this melee of group just came up and they marched. There was thousands of people marching up Broad Street to the center city partying. Well, they saw Tost's limousine over there. And of course, we weren't very good. They come over there in a group and start rocking this limousine. And they rolled it 2 or 3 times. It looked like it had just been taken to a wrecking yard and munched up in one of those machines. And we watched all that happening. And so right after that, we were just hanging out there waiting for everything to clear. And so they had an old statue that we were sitting on the foundation of it and looked up. I didn't know we were sitting under it. We're looking up on the I said, Dempsey, look at that old 40s football player up there. I said, he looks kind of like you, except his foot's good. He didn't have a half a foot.
Right.
And so I said, we're going to make that statue of this. So we hired everything cleared out. We hired a welder to come up to cut that foot off and put an end on it so it looked like Dempsey. And Dempsey was all in on it. So we did it about 1:30 in the morning. This cop comes rolling up on the second level, seeing what was happening up there. And he had a billy club in his hand, one of Rizzo's finest, by the way, Frank Rizzo. And so he was clapping it in his hand. What are you boys doing up here? And he looked at me and he looked at Dempsey. He says, aren't you Tom Dempsey? And he said, aren't you Bill Brown? I said, yes, sir. We just wanted to make this statue Tom needed because they weren't going to leave anything for him. And he was such a great kicker, had a record, for the longest. And the guy said, well, I tell you what I'm going to do. I'm not going to arrest you because you'll probably get done with your football career. I said, but what you got to do is get that welder to come back and you got to get him to weld that half a foot back on that statue. And then you got to slag it. You got to make it clean and all that stuff. And he says, and I'm not going to say a word about it. So we did that. And for years I'd take people by there and you could see where we had welded that thing back and cleaned it up. That it had been cut off. You could tell, but it didn't look, you had to go look closely at it. So that's another one. Dempsey and I's claim to fame. God bless him. He got lost to the coronavirus here last year.
Yeah. Bill, I got 2 more things I got to get you to talk
about.
Am
I talking too much?
You're a talker, but that's okay. All right. First thing, Harold Carmichael this week, Hall of Fame. You've been honored, numerous times, and you're going to be honored this fall. I believe it's November. The Philadelphia Sports Hall of Fame will induct several new members on November 4th, including Rip Hamilton, the Coltsville player who went to the NBA, Mark Recchi, the former Flyer, the late Phillies manager, Dallas Green, and a couple of great Eagles, Seth Joyner and you. That's a pretty nice honor, Bill.
Oh, thank you. I take it as a great honor because it's just neat, and so I'm going up there and then I got to do a panel another week or two. And I'm going to get to go stay with a friend of mine that just made contact. And I'm going to be on a panel in Northeast Philly. And then I've got to go back whenever they induct people into the Eagle Hall of Honor. I get to go back for all that. I love Philly. Philly's my city, man. I mean, and people love me. And one of my claim to fames there is that not leading the league and getting Oscars for being the leader of interceptions 2 years in a row, first and last person, or the first person to do it too, all that kind of mess. And so I get to go back and, man, I just love doing it. And one of my claims to fame is from Franklin Field to the vet. I was a lunch pail guy, a punter first, and then ended up being a safety and a returner and a holder and all that stuff. I never got booed at Franklin Field or the vet. And I claim that as my favorite thing in the world.
Yeah, you're one of the few.
And then the second one is the fact that I was a cardboard cutout this past season when they had it.
I did not know that.
Oh, yeah, I was a cardboard cutout. I've been showing that picture to everybody.
Bill, I got to ask you about this because I've heard this rumor, this legend. Ray Didinger has been on with us numerous times. He's a fan of our show for some reason. but he's also a fan of you and an old friend of yours. And we never talked to him about this, but according to his radio partner, Glenn Mack now, you and Ray Diddy during his early years as a reporter would often kind of go out and paint the town and have some good times. I need some details.
Ray is still a great friend of mine. And we can't even tell stories. We get to laughing so darn hard on the dang telephone.
Ray was a party animal. Is that right?
He wasn't a party animal. But he was getting close. We could hear him growling a little bit as an animal would. Boy, what a wonderful guy. And and he and I still talk. As a matter of fact, he's doing the forward, and they're writing a new book about me, a guy that wrote the book about the Phillies. And he's doing the forward in that thing. And I've seen the forward, and it's really neat, man. And Ray's just a great guy. Of course, Ray was always honest. He was probably one of the most honest sports writers you could talk to back then, because you could trust him to put it in like you wanted it to, or like the real way was. And there was nobody ever got mad at it. He was just so honest and so great to interview that I love to be interviewed by him, because it was always going to be a really fair article and a neat one on top of that. And he knows where all the bodies are buried.
Is there any more information on that book? Because it's funny you said that, because I was just going to say, my next thing up I was going to say to you is they ought to write a book about your life, because there's another Bill Bradley thing I kind of stumbled on. And it's the movie My All-American about Freddie Steinmark at the University of Texas. And you were a key player on that squad and a bit in that movie as well. You've had a full
great light, and that was another Jim Dent movie. The actual book was called Courage Beyond the Game, but they just they never put the backstory in there. They just showed me as being kind of a cocky guy that got demoted as a quarterback.
But it showed you in the end coming back and being the team man that got it all straightened out too.
Yeah, that was the part where I was captain of the team, and when I got demoted to wide receiver, and they only had one then, and I think I was third team, but I did punt and hold and return punts. So when I got demoted in Coach Royal's office, I went in his office, and he said, "Bill, we're going to make some change," because we were having some 6-4 seasons, and he was about to get fired. Stuff rolls down the hill,
Mm-hmm.
And so he called me in his office after we lost to Texas Tech. We were 0-1-1, and he says, my senior year, he said, "Bill, we're going to make some changes around here, and we're going to start with you." So I called home right after that meeting with Coach Royal, and I said, "Cephas," my dad's nickname was Cephas. I said, "Cephas, I think my life's over with down here at the University of Texas. I'm going to hitchhike home." And he got of course, he was a baseball coach and a hard drinking railroad man. So anyway, I said, "Cephas, I think my life's over with down here at school. I'm going to hitchhike home." And it got real silent for 10 minutes. And that's a long time on the phone, just nobody saying anything, as I expected some reaction. Finally, I said, "Daddy, you still there?" He said, the thing that came out of his voice, and this meant it ended up being something that just led me the rest of my life. And I said, "Cephas, you still there?" And he said, his words were, "To hell you are." He said, "You're not quitting. The Bradleys don't quit. And if you quit and come home, you don't have a home here." And that's when I turned it around, went out to practice the next day and unloosened my, and I was captain of the team and everything. We had every media, print media and everything, local TV stations, Newsweek, Time, Sports Illustrated was there to see how Super Bill was going to take this demotion. And after talking to my dad, I went out there and my best friend took my job, James Street, and then won a national championship. And we ripped off the rest of the games. And we went 9-1-1 and annihilated Tennessee in the Cotton Bowl and finished third in the nation. Well, the next year I was gone to the Eagle. James was a quarterback and they won a national championship. So I went out to practice the next day with all the media there. And I said, "James," I was in a pat and goal line out there with the receivers. And I said, "James, no matter what I do, throw the ball where I can catch it." And he said, "Oh, not a problem." So I go out and hit. Nobody saw it. I undid my sweats and we had on a T-shirt and just regular old football shoe. And I started running down there to catch a little easy going pat and go throw. and I did it on purpose because it was a tight. I mean, you could cut everything with a knife. It was so tense with all the media there and this and that and the other. And so I started running, and my pants came down to my ankle, and and it's in the movie. That bit's in the movie. And so when I caught it, all you could see was a jockey strap and a big old white butt. And so I looked around on the ground, and Coach Royal had his clipboard in his hand way back there about 20 yards, and he slapped that thing down on the ground. I'm thinking, oh my goodness. And he started laughing his butt off. And that was the day that I became, as a captain, I think I became the leader of that football team. And I got drafted by the Eagles in the 3rd round as a punter / player.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And then they finally traded Scarpati, who was my idol, because he was the smartest young man in football back then as a safety. And so when they traded him, they inserted me. But before that, we were in a game against the Cowboys, and they were kicking our rear ends. And so I went over to Gummy Carr. And I went over to Gummy, who was the D coordinator, who was on that 63 championship team by the Eagles.
1960, yeah.
60. Yeah, with Bednarik, Concrete Charlie, and all them. And I got to be friends with them later on. But anyway, we're playing Dallas, and I kept badgering him because there's no way we were coming back. And I kept going over. I said, Gummy, Coach, why don't you put some of us rookies in so you can see if we can play or not? Get away from me. I'm trying to coach. And so finally I went over there in about the middle of the 4th quarter against the Cowboys. They were ahead of us so much that Staubach had just gotten back from the Navy doing his stint, and they had put him in the game to see what he could do. And they had just traded for a tight end named Mike Ditka, and he was in there. Well, we were blitzing, and the free safety has to come over and cover the tight end. So Gummy said, hell, just get in there, Bradley. So the first play from the line of scrimmage, and Ray knows this story. They're at the 46-yard line going in, and we're blitzing. I got to come over and cover the tight end. Well, we're blitzing and about to hit Staubach. He was in there because they were so far ahead. See what Ditka sees me coming right at him, and he straightens up. Well, Staubach threw it to the spot, and I intercepted it and took it back for a touchdown. The first play from the line of scrimmage that I played as far as on defense. So I went over to the sideline, and Gummy's going, Bradley, what in the heck are you doing? You're way up by the line of scrimmage, and your job was to come over off and play deep in case somebody got loose. And he kept bitching at me. And finally I kept the ball, and I had it behind my back. And I said, well, Gummy, you want me to give this back to him? And he said, oh, Bradley, just get out of my sight. Stay back there when you're supposed to.
Well, Bill, thanks again for coming on, and good luck in Canton. Good luck with the Philadelphia Sports Hall of Fame as well when you come into town.
I got some great stories about the Phillies now because I was at every one of their games dating all the hot pants girls.